I also had a bit of a ridiculous wonder. I don't know whether you guys saw this as well, where I was trying to get my passport back. So I've had some troubles with my passport recently. I mean, I sent it off to the UK to get renewed a while back. But when it came back, it didn't have my visa in it. And I needed to go and redo my visa.
Also, it took like 3 months longer to get your passport than it was supposed to.
Yes, it took me forever to get my passport back. But I got my passport back just before I had to go back to the UK. But as I said in this tweet, I was trying to get my passport, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, the passport office recommended that I go and pick up my passport from Edinburgh. I don't live near Edinburgh. I live 150 miles away from Edinburgh. And when I got... Well, it wasn't in Edinburgh either. If anyone knows Edinburgh at all, it's quite a small city. If it had been in Edinburgh, I could have probably walked and got it just from getting off the train. Well, I did walk and get it, actually, yeah. But it was in a town about 30 minutes on the train west of Edinburgh called Livingston, or Livingston, something like that, anyway. And so I went out there on the train, and then when I got there, I realized that I'd fucked up because I hadn't checked into my hotel yet. The check-in wasn't open, so I had to get my passport first because I needed to do passport, COVID test, and then check into the airport. You can't do your COVID test without a passport. At least that's what they said to me. It turns out you actually could. And so I had to get the passport first. At least I thought so. So I had 50 kilograms of baggage, like this unbelievable wide load on my back. I don't know whether I showcase it, but like this bag is enormous. And I look like, I don't know, I look like a mutant turtle. I've got the bag on my back and then a bag on my front as well. No, I don't live in Scotland, Remiskel. I live 150 miles away from Scotland, but for some reason they told me to go to Scotland. So I went up here, and when I looked on Google Maps, it was a mile away into the woods. So I'd already gone 30 minutes west to... so I'd taken a train 4 hours north, then I'd taken a train 30 minutes west. And then when I arrived at the town that my passport was in, I had to walk for a mile through the woods.
Some of you, if you've never heard my travel stories before, won't believe me when I say this, but I'm currently on a hike in Scotland trying to get my passport back. I mean, I've just got off the train. I'm as wide as it possibly gets. I mean, I've got one on the front and one on the back, and I'm just hiking down this trail where there's apparently my passport is at the end of it. How do I get myself into these positions?
Yeah, well, the answer is because you're an idiot, but we all know that. But this trail lasted for about a mile, and it eventually... Why so much luggage? Because I'm going home! I was flying out of Edinburgh, so I had to leave my parents' place with all of my stuff,
2 months worth of luggage.
with 2 months worth of luggage, and then go and pick up my passport and fly out the next day at 9 a.m. So I had 1 day to get everything done. So I hiked through these woods, and I eventually got to a place, and it was just a big industrial area. And one of them was a depot for a courier service. And there was nobody watching the front door. There was no signs for where you're supposed to go. So I just wandered in with my baggage. I kind of looked around a bit, and I was like, okay, this is a weird place to have passports just around. So I walked in. There was somebody just taking stuff off a truck, and so I was like, excuse me, I'm going to try and pick up a delivery. Where do I go? And he's like, oh yeah, go to the office. So I walk over to the office. Nobody in the office building at all. And I can see on the desk a pile of passports. No one there. Just like they were growing on a tree. You could have just plucked them. If anyone is interested, I mean, it's just absurd. It's got massive security flaws, that place. So I'm not going to say exactly where it is, because otherwise I feel like I'm actually just giving people a cheat code for identity theft. So I knocked on a window, and somebody who was working in like admin around the back knocked on somebody else's door, and they came out around the front, and they were like, "Oh yeah, sorry, what's your name?" I was like, "Oh, it's Josh," and they just kind of rifled through, and they were like, "Oh yeah, here it is," and I was like, "Oh, I'll show you my ID," and they were like, "Oh yeah, and just gave me it. I mean, just absurd, just an awful place to have such important documents. Yeah, so I managed to pick up my passport. Has my visa in it. All good. Same happened to me in Korea, but I was in a shipyard. I would not want to go to a Korean shipyard to pick up my passport either. Surely you could get that thing like delivered back to your hotel or something, Bren. It is silly. It's absolutely silly. Yeah, just silly.
At your interview, they asked you if you still work for esports.
Oh, yeah. When I went to my visa interview, they said the guy, there was a young guy as well. He had a see-through shirt on too. His shirt was white, but you could clearly see his skin through it. And I was very distracted by his nipples. Because here's somebody that controls whether or not I'm allowed back to see my fiance and to continue to work in the United States of America, and he's just got a sheer shirt on, just nipples out, essentially. And so it was very distracting. But he asked me, he's looking through my documents, he's rifling through, and he looks up and he says, "Do you still work for esports?" And I was like, well, that's more of a genre of work rather than my employer. I'm not employed by esports.
No, you are esports.
Yeah, so I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, "I am esports! Begone, peon!" And so now I'm allowed in the US. So, Poogers. So yeah, he asked me that, and he asked me some other weird questions too. And then he said, "Can you give me a passport photo?" Now, I am not very good at planning, and I haven't told you this either, but I thought they said,
You haven't told me.
No. They told me you have to bring a 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter picture of yourself to the visa process, and they'll use that picture in your visa. So I was like, okay, well, I've already uploaded one, so I'll just use that. And so I printed it out, but I just printed it on normal paper. I just printed a 5x5 picture of myself on like A4
Pause. This
printer
was
paper.
like a week after you were roasting your sister for doing the same thing.
Yeah. So
You were giving her so much shit for doing exactly that.
well, I don't own a printer, or rather, my parents do, but I hadn't got the paperwork from my lawyers yet by then. So I only got the paperwork from my lawyers the night before. So I went to a library and I printed it all off. So it's like 55 pages of documentation. I print them all off at the local library in Edinburgh, and not in London, because I did the visa interview in London. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll just print off this color A4 picture of myself. It's not full A4, but it was a 5x5 thing on an A4. So I was like, okay, well, I've got that. Then I was like, oh shit, they probably want it cut out, don't they? Like, they probably want it to be actually 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. So I was like, all right, I'll get some scissors. But the Airbnb that I was staying at didn't have any scissors. So I used a kitchen knife. I used a kitchen knife to cut out this.
Are you okay? Oh my god.
I used a kitchen knife to cut out this 5x5 centimeter picture of myself, which, by the way, again, is just a color picture on A4 done by a library printer. And so when I walked into my visa appointment, the guy with his nipples out, said to me, "Do you have the picture of yourself?" And I handed him this scruffily cut out, white edges everywhere, scrumpled slightly, picture of myself. I think I still have it somewhere. I don't know where it is. No, I threw it out actually because I was embarrassed. And he looked at me. He took it. He looked down. And he looked back at me and he said, "No, the real one." Just dead in the eyes. Thought that I had come and pranked him. He could not conceive of someone so stupid as to turn up with that he thought I was playing a fucking joke on him, I guess.
So when I asked if the interview went well, and you were like, "Yeah, it was great."
Yeah, it was great, apart from the guy roasting me for bringing in this scruffy picture of myself. He just looked at me and said, "No, the real one." And I said to him, "Yeah, I thought that's what that was." And he looked at me and he just said, "No." He just said no and shook his head. And I had to go and get a separate, proper passport picture taken. Thankfully, they had one at the consulate, at the embassy. Because when I've done that previously, I've again turned up with a photo that wasn't eligible in the past.
Oh,
And
so you've been through this process before.
yeah, and that time they told me I had to walk a mile down the road to a photographer. So yeah, at least in London they did have them at the embassy. So yeah, I was a fucking idiot during that, but oh yeah, I've done it before. Yeah, I mean not in the same way. I think last time I can't even remember what I did. Took a photo that was out of date or something. I can't remember.